Hello, folks. I'm going to have a brief little lesson here on using textual evidence. While many of us are finding where we're able to go to the text and locate the answer and find the answer to the question, we are falling just short of using the text as a basis or using it as our evidence to support our responses. So let's go over how to do some of that here. All right, first I want us to make sure that we know what is an original source. A source is where something's coming from. So whatever information you have, it comes from someplace. So when you're in your English course here, we've really moved away from narrative writing where wherever that information has is coming directly from you. We're going much, much more. So we're living in the world of we want to see how proficient you are in forming opinions, but still going to the text to tell where you got that information from. And you can do that in one of three ways here. We can do it by quoting, by using quotations. And what that is, just simply getting something from the text. Well, when we form an opinion, then going to the text and getting word for word where in the text that gave us that opinion allowed us to form that kind of a statement. We can paraphrase, which is much like quoting, but you are not stating it word for word. However, you're making sure that you are remaining authentic to the quote and we're not altering its meaning. Or a summary, where you're just getting a bunch of the information while still giving credit to where the information comes from, the original source. You just are condensing a lot of information. But again, all three of these is very important that you give credit to the original source. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, so we're going to see how this looks. I want to read this really quickly. I promise I'll go really quickly because I want you to see how this looks. All right. Can classical music help you ace a test? This is coming from Soundtracks for Success. Can pop music lower a grade on a test? Stanford researcher Clifford Nass thinks so. He's found that the type of music you listen to as you study can impact your levels of learning. In a 2009 study, Nass found that processing language and listening to songs with lyrics can drain resources from the same part of the brain. That means rock, rap, and classical country music might be distracting when you read. Instrumental music stimulates the different region of the brain, so Beethoven and Bach are better choices for background music. While the connection between language and lyrics can cause brain drain in certain situations like studying, it can be found to be helpful in other contexts. Another researcher, Dr. Jamal Patel, has worked extensively with stroke victims who lost their ability to speak. Using a technique called melodic intonation therapy, Dr. Patel teaches patients to sing the words and phrases that they can't speak in regular conversation. Interesting. Okay, so here's a quote here. This is asking us to quote the second sentence in the second paragraph, which would put us right here. It's the one about rock, rap, and country music. That it might be distracting when you read. So this is how I chose to quote it while still giving credit according to the researcher Clifford Nass. Here's my quote: rock, rap, country music might be distracting when you read. Note the proper placement of the punctuation inside of the quotation mark. Here we have the paraphrasing, which again is just like quotation from the text, except for you are not going word for word. But again, it's very important that you do not omit information that alters the meaning of the quote. So we have here in the last sentence of the first paragraph, it says that he's found that the type of music you listen to as you study can impact your levels of learning. I have here very similarly in Soundtracks for Success, giving credit, researcher Clifford Nass found the type of music we listen to impacts our learning levels. Same thing. In my own words, I do not alter or stray away from the meaning of the original quote. And then lastly here, I have that error there on purpose. I want to address that in just a moment. But it says to summarize the last paragraph. Here's that paragraph. Remember I said it's getting a bunch of information and trying to condense it. I have this paragraph here it gives an alternative view. It says, while music may not be good for studying, Dr. Jamal Patel has found that it works well. And well, let me read it. Alternatively, Dr. Jamal Patel has found music with lyrics as great therapy for stroke patients with impaired speech called, and I know I omitted a word here because this limits the words I can put here, called melodic intonation therapy. Again, I kind of surmised it all. I chose to put alternatively there because you will notice here for the first sentence of this paragraph, it's letting you know that it's about to pivot. It starts off with talking about music that with lyrics, how it may be distracting, but it's pivoting here and showing how music with lyrics can help another focus group. In this case, patients, stroke patients who have impaired speech. So here I have. Alternatively, Dr. Patel has found that music with lyrics is great therapy for music patients with impaired speech called melodic therapy, melodic intonation therapy. Now here, I note that little red dot here. If you are working in Chrome, which I think is really, really a good thing, I love Chrome. It doesn't pick up on a lot of errors. One add-on that is available is called Grammarly. And Grammarly is just awesome. It's amazing. I really want for you to use it. You know how in Microsoft Office products, it does make corrections or it tells you about different spelling and sometimes punctuation. Well, Grammarly does that on basically anything you work with in Chrome, whether that be social media, different websites, blah, blah, blah. It also corrects that information. And how do you get that? If you just go to a regular home page, and I believe that you must have a Gmail account right up top here. Or at least it's just easier with a Gmail account. Right up top here, you go to the web store. When you go to the web store, you're going to type in search Grammarly. And the reason I love it so is that while it just doesn't just put the little red lines underneath to say that it's wrong, it goes into in-depth explanation as to why it's incorrect. And it's like a little language arts teacher everywhere you go. Okay, so then here it says, it appears that you've improperly spaced some punctuation. Let's act as if we don't know what you're talking about. Well, you click more and it gives you, sorry. Oh, come on. Let's do that again. Space. I must have corrected it without even thinking about it. All right. So what it does there, if you click more, it gives you more explanation. It gives you examples. It goes through. It's just great. I love it. And don't do what I just did. Don't just let it correct you and move on. Allow it to give you an explanation. Okay. All right. So and then that little green dot there lets me know that it has checked my grammar. Of course, check your own work. You may be trying to convey a message that it doesn't recognize, but again, it comes highly recommended. All right, and then moving on, this is a concept that this is introducing called the quotation sandwich. I like the idea, but just follow it and see what you mean, see what you think. Now, this is an example of a really good short response. And let me tell you, let's go through the little pieces of the sandwich. The introduction here would be like the top crust, where it says, according to journalist Stephanie Street, Music and Memory has used MP3 players to treat seniors with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Now, that alone sounds like a great answer, right? However, if I were grading that, I would say, okay, elaborate. Give me more. What do you mean? How do you know that? Where did that information come from? In which case, you give your meat here. You're going to state something here, and then you go to the quote. That's basically letting know this is where I got this information from. This is the quote that lets me know that, and then it ends with a reflection. Okay, a reflection being the last sentence here. That's kind of just surmising it, kind of putting like your little icing on it, like this is my answer. So again, you start off with giving the response. You're going to here, you go to give a quote or paraphrasing a quote that's given the meat. This is where in the text I located my answer, and then surmising it with a nice reflection. You could look at this one little paragraph as an entire essay. You kind of start off with giving your information, the meat or your body paragraphs where you're giving information from the text or text if you're working in certain assignments in your courses, and then you end it with a good solid ending conclusion paragraph that is summarizing all the information. All right. Now we're going to have what's really, really important. I have some students, we're kind of starting to see some plagiarism. And I think what a lot of that is some of you may not grasp exactly what it means. All in all, plagiarism is the act of taking someone else's words and ideas and calling them your own. Now, you may not be doing that intentionally. You may, when you've read this article and you read question number 1 and you know the answer to it and you just give the answer and you're like, because you know, why do you know that answer so well? Because you just read it in the passage. Please make sure that you give credit. So let's see what that looks like here. I already have the correct answer clicked here, but I want you to see how the other ones see that 3 of these are not examples of plagiarism and which one is. So let's look at this first one. It says, in the article about the connection between music and language, John Wilderman wrote that rock, rap, and country might be distracting when you read. You know, this is not an example of plagiarism because not only is it giving us a quote, it tells us directly where that quote came from in an article. What article and who said it? John. It gives you everything you're supposed to have. Let's just skip on down to the other non-examples of plagiarism. John Wilderman, a journalist, observed that Beethoven and Bach make good background music for study sessions. Where did that information come from? John Wilderman. Who's John Wilderman? He's a journalist. Okay, got it. Moving on here. In an article about the human brain, John Wilderman wrote about 2 researchers who study the way that learning is impacted by music. The impact can be positive or negative. Okay, where's this information coming from? John Wilderman. Who's John Wilderman? Well, he wrote something, he wrote an article. Okay, now let's look at this one. Let's see the stark contrast between this response and the others. While the connection between language and lyrics can cause brain drain in certain situations like studying, it can be helpful in other contexts. Okay, well, because we've all read this, we know where this comes from. However, as the reader, as the teacher, as whoever is grading this, we're going to act as if we don't know where this came from. I'm going to act as if I don't know unless you tell me where it comes from, unless you give credit to the source. Got it? I really, really hope that all made sense. Again, if you did not state where the information has come from, you're plagiarizing, and we're not doing that. Okay, so just a brief recap. How do I know that you have, or how do you know that you fulfilled the requirement of each response, whether it be an essay, prompt, or a short response? Make sure that you give credit to the source by way of quotations, paraphrasing, or surmising, or a mixture of all 3 if you're writing an essay, which makes your paper much broader and showing your chops like you know what you're doing. Make sure that we keep in mind that quotation sandwich idea that they've presented here. Start off with a good solid introduction, which in essence gives the answer. It lets me know you know the answer, but don't stop there. From there, make sure that you go to the text and provide a quote or paraphrase the quote to support your answer, and then end with a good reflection. And then, again, above all, let's refrain from the plagiarizing. Please, please give credit to where your information comes from. All right, so now it is your turn. I'll give you a really brief paragraph here to look at. After you read this paragraph, you are going to answer these 3 questions here on the bottom, which is very similar to what we just did. You can press pause, or I will leave this running for a couple minutes to give you enough time. I want for you to make sure that you show me that is something that you were able to understand the contents of this video. If you're still finding where you're having some trouble with signing your information, by all means, please reach out to your English or language arts teacher. Okay, let's check this out. If you are having any other issues with being able to cite information in your responses, please reach out to your English teacher.